Launch your career. Master the tools, strategies, and mindset to turn your education into opportunity. This is Career Corner with your host, Maddie Paul.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Career Corner, the podcast where we explore all the tools and resources you need to succeed in your college and career journey. I'm your host, Maddie, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Professor Randi Picarelli. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
It's great to have you because I am so excited about today's episode. We're going to be talking about something that I think is on the minds of a lot of students, but we don't always know where to start, and that is networking and internships. And what we're going to be doing today, I just couldn't think of a better person to talk with because this conversation is with one of my former professors here at CSUN, the Communications Studies Department, and I had the pleasure of taking you for Comms 453, which is, for everyone who does not know, organizational communications, where I completed one of the most beneficial projects of my college career, and I'd definitely say one of the more memorable. And it was surrounding networking and interviewing and working towards internships. And I just felt this was something so real to learn and to experience. And I want to dive into this assignment, as well as the power of internships, networking, and how you have encouraged your students to build and prepare this professional toolkit as they go on to graduation.
I love it. I think it's a really valuable conversation, particularly for our student demographic.
Yeah. So I wanted to start with your background. I know you work as a communications coach as well, but I also want to talk about what led you into becoming a professor here at CSUN.
I got my bachelor's degree at Cal State Northridge and wanted to go into journalism, broadcast journalism, and kind of from a social justice bent. Investigative reporting, and it was right after the earthquake. All of the studios here had been destroyed from the Northridge quake in 1994, and I majored in communication studies because they had a building and an elevator, and I didn't have to take classes in a mobile home out in a parking lot. I fell in love with the discipline, with the coursework, and frankly, in platonic love with most of my teachers and wanted to continue studying. So I got my advanced degree, my master's degree here as well. And at that point, I started teaching and, and shifted gears, if you will. I really fell into it. I think that's an important thing to say at the top of this interview is that for young people who may be watching this, that a lot of your career trajectory isn't going to be planned and that we can prepare, which I think is really important, and plan and have goals, but to also know that so much of what is going to happen for so many of us is going to be kind of ambiguous and spontaneous and undirected, if you will, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I can share a similar story as someone who, got through high school and I just didn't know. I didn't know which way, how to get to the goals that I had. And I started at community college. I joined communications because it was broad, but in a vague way that I didn't feel like I needed to tell people that this was my specific plan because it's hard to have one.
Sure.
And through mentorship and the people I met and all of that, and then coming here to CSUN, it has become I've become who I am now. And I think that's so true to a lot of people's experience because you don't need to know. And so I was so inspired to have you on this episode because Comms 453 specifically, but also as a whole, as a professor, I wanted to dive into just what your goals are for your students, like what those objectives are in guiding, whether it's a comms student or just it's any student, any young person seeking that next step.
I think it's a really valuable question. And I want to go back a little bit, not to talk about me, but I want to also predicate this by saying my entire career history has been the product of networking. And then I also interned at 20 years old through a community college. I was a bartender who paid my way through school, through bartending jobs, and ultimately continued to bartend well into my 40s. Every job I ever had was a phone call with somebody who knew my reputation and what I could do. I never had to pound the pavement. As a teacher, I've worked at 7 institutions, 2-year and 4-year, public and private, from UCLA to Loyola Marymount, Cal State Northridge, College of the Canyons, Woodbury University, and Santa Monica College, right? So I've covered the gamut of institutions in LA. Every single one of those jobs I got because somebody either called and said, we've heard about you, or I met you at that conference, or, I wrote your chair for a list of names and you came referred. So I am the product of networking, every job I've ever had. And I think that's a really critical piece, right?
Yeah.
I speak to the experience that I know that I needed and that students need.
How do you feel like you can communicate this experience to students? I feel like networking can sound just like, oh, I got that call or that person knew me. How do you start at zero, though?
Okay. So I think there is value to the kind of formal and traditional idea of networking events, to attending the things that are hosted at school. But I think it's really about, what are students doing these days? They're on TikTok, they're on social media, they're on Instagram, and using, what are they called? Social networks. Using them, right, to really propagate and proliferate the amount of people that you have exposure to. So that's the first thing I would say. It doesn't have to be kind of boots on the ground. I have to go attend something. I think joining as many organizations during your college career as possible. Clubs on campus, the Greek system is an invaluable way to create networks, sports teams, right? Because the reality is the more exposure you have to people who are not like you, and the more exposure you have, this is kind of like tip number 1 that you'll get during this interview, to people who have what you want, right? A network of other people who are 20 years old or 25 years old is great, but who are their relatives? Who are their family friends, right? Who did they have access to? Yeah. It's not about people you like, it's about people who have what you aspire to have.
Yeah, I think that was a great segue into the assignment I want to talk about, okay. the organizational network and interviewing project, because I felt like that was exactly the goal. I want you to explain it, but I remember sitting there, and the assignment was essentially, I think you shared it in the first week or two, was that we needed to find someone we did not know, but they were at that point in their career that we wanted to get to, whatever industry, whatever position, but to find that person and to bang on the door, cold call, email until we could sit down and have a chat, whether it was virtual or not. Yeah. But I wanted to hear you kind of describe what inspired this project, what you've seen come from it.
First of all, it's part of my teaching philosophy that my classes should have practical application. So while we teach a lot of theory in the communication studies department, the theory for me doesn't do a lot of good. It's wonderful for us to be philosophers, but how can we use what we've learned? And so every course that I teach, I have an interview assignment, and I tailor it to the course. It could be an oral history with a woman generations older than you in my gender or rhetoric of women classes. In my professional classes, like the internship course or the organizational course, then it's parlayed into kind of like a professional development or career research interview. In my intercultural class, it's an interview that's cross-cultural. So this is just an assignment that I love for communication studies students, but let's kind of ground it in some research. Statistically, 1 in 12 career research interviews or informal networking interviews will lead to a job or an internship. 1 in 12. If you look at what cold calling, walking the streets, right, pounding the pavement, and handing out CVs or resumes to people you don't know, the statistics there are 1 in 300, right? Yeah. Cold calls will lead to an internship or a job. So for me, there's utility. I have a responsibility to my students to give them opportunities. And as their teacher, if I were your mentor, I could say, oh, you need to go do this thing because it will be really good for your career trajectory. As your teacher, I can force you to do that through the guise of an assignment and really encourage people to be brave, right? I know it's scary to talk to people you don't already know. I know it's maybe humbling to post on your social media page, I need somebody who's working in marketing, or I have to talk to a film director for an assignment. But I've done this assignment for 20 years at very prestigious elite institutions that aren't CSUN. And the rewards that students get are overwhelming and just remind me that I have to keep it going.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who did it, it felt rewarding in the sense that you're reminded that you can do these things. Yeah, like it can be so scary to send those emails or to reach out when you have no connection. And I'll even say like some of the ones I shared, I got no reply to, as it happens. But through a friend of a friend, I met someone doing entertainment and communications and HR, and it was such a rewarding like sit down conversation, getting to hear about what internship opportunities that she could provide me, or that what doors she could open, or just whose hands she could help me shake in the future. It was so special, and I felt it was a reminder that that is something that I can continue to do and have continued to do. And so I wanted to see in today's world, a lot of applications are through LinkedIn or Handshake, or you can still cold email, but I feel it is harder to meet those people, or at least I think that's the barriers that today's internet culture creates for us to see. I feel like as students, you think you're sending the hundreds of LinkedIn applications, but not really meeting anyone. You're just going in the pools. What networking advice can you give that may extend beyond online?
So I think the first thing, again, let's back up a little bit, kind of to the nature of the assignment, which your listeners or viewers don't know about. It can translate outside of the classroom. The assignment asks people to network, to find somebody they don't already know who has what they want, to research that person and the organization they work for, and then to interview them with a series of questions that aren't self-motivated, right? You're not out there to get a job. You're knocking on doors saying, can I pick your brain? You have an incredible career. I'd love to do what you do someday. I'm a young, eager college student who wants to get their foot in the door somewhere, and I just really admire your path, right? I'd love to hear any advice that you have, or, to get to know you. With that in mind, anyone can send those kinds of emails, whether you're in a community college, whether you're new to your career, whether you're still at a university, right? It doesn't have to be for an assignment. I'm a recent graduate. I'm still working my restaurant or my retail job. I'm really trying to move into finance. I looked at your bio on LinkedIn. You've got an incredible history, and I would love to buy you a coffee and pick your brain. And right, I don't know a lot of people in this industry. And see what you think is possible, right? Or hear how you did it. And we have to be brave. We have to be humble. We have to accept rejection. But I'm talking about the networking experience before the internship, before the job application, just building a resource, right? A repertoire of people who you can say, I know them, that you can use perhaps as a letter of reference someday. Remember that when you're interviewing somebody, you are also making an impression on them. So folks like me, I get these calls all the time from students who say, I might want to go into teaching. Can I talk to you about the graduate program? Or would you be willing to talk to me about how you got into this particular institution? Absolutely. Adult professionals love to talk about themselves, right? We now can do this via Zoom. So it's not a lot of time out of somebody's day. And sure, there will be times that you don't hear back from somebody, but there will be times that you do. And I also encourage anyone who's looking for jobs and looking to expand their networking possibilities to do this as much as they do the formal networking events, because at a networking event, 50 other students are there networking as well, right? That feels like a group job interview versus a conversation that you've initiated one-on-one with somebody. And I think we have to start using our friends, our family members, all of the resources possible to get access to folks who are just one rung above us professionally.
No, I love that. And I believe it is your own teaching that was that explanation of the weak ties and strong ties, and that you can use the friend of the friend, or the family and the extended family, or someone's new boyfriend or girlfriend, and they might be in these industries, or they might know these people, and that using those can feel awkward, sure, but can be so rewarding. And I think that's so true. And staying authentic, and even if we're intimidated by having to do these networking, that it can just open so many opportunities, and that the heart of networking is expanding your own network and having those connections for who knows when. But transitioning from networking, I wanted to talk about internships. Because we kind of talked that today, they don't always feel realistic, I would say, especially because so many can be unpaid and not every student is in a situation to do that.
Right.
But they also can be so necessary for experience and meeting people and building your network. And I know you have taught internship-based courses in the past. And so I wanted to kind of dive into how you feel about their importance and how students today navigate that.
First of all, I don't see networking and internship as like mutually exclusive because one of the primary goals of an internship, you'll come away, if it's done well, you'll come away with an entirely new set of skills. That's what an internship's supposed to be. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. But the other thing that you come away with is a new network of professionals, right, that you had access to for a period of time. Okay, so I heard you say that they feel unrealistic. I hear that because they are more competitive. And the reality is that employers more frequently, increasingly, are taking on interns as unpaid labor to fill the kind of grunt work, the entry level work, if you will, that they don't want to pay folks for. But that's a double-edged sword because it does advantage young people who don't know how to make the transition from their degree into professional life. So I'm going to speak specifically to the CSUN community. Having taught at all of those other fancy schools that I mentioned, right, the private schools that I mentioned, and UCLA, schools that are admirable and reputable in this town, the quality of education that a student receives here at CSUN is, if not parallel, superior to those other institutions. What our students lack that those students have is the professional agency, the professional resources, right, and the community connections. That's what our kids don't have. So the internship for me isn't an option, it is a necessity. It is so sometimes heartbreaking, kind of confounding to me when I see students who are working, let's say, a retail job at the mall who graduated 7 or 8 years ago. And I know this isn't what they anticipated, right? But it's so hard to make the transition for so many of us from exiting the institution where you might have been a straight A student and Dean's List and done all the things to the job of your dreams, or at least a foot in the door to the job of your dreams. And I know that was a long preface. I cannot overemphasize the importance of an internship. The unpaid piece is really disheartening in this climate. I know that. When I directed our program through the Comm Studies department, and every major at CSUN has internship courses or internship opportunities. So this isn't unique to us. This is CSUN-wide. While you are in school is the only time you can get an internship, right? Because you are earning course credit to basically be free labor. So that's kind of the trade-off. If students think, well, I can't do this for free, enroll in the class like any other course, right? You're getting 3 units toward graduation, and that's why an employer can take you on. Because if an internship is done well, they are teaching you how to do things like a teacher would in a classroom, right? Once you graduate from college, internships are not possible. That's exploitative, right? That's indentured servitude. You can't make people work for free. We know what that experience was in the United States, and we don't do that anymore. So there are labor laws that protect students, adults, and employers from that practice. So that was a long-winded answer. But how to get there? I actually don't know as much about the kind of Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn version of interning. What I do know is, again, using the network to get the internship, to reach out to everybody you know. I'm a soon-to-be college graduate. I have 20 hours a week to devote my time. I am resourceful. I have ingenuity. I am responsible. I am creative. I am driven, and I will give you my skill set, my existing skill set for free, right? If you teach me what I need to know to get out on the other side of this and be employable.
Yeah.
And so I hear you. Everything is done online, but you know that it's not because you had this experience. And when I used to teach the internship class, every student who enrolled got an internship. And that was only a couple of years ago, that the class is since taught by somebody else. But 30 students a semester and in the summer who found internships through a variety of methods. Sometimes it could be as clever as going to your existing employer at your, let's make it up. You work at a fast food restaurant. You go, okay, I know this isn't part of my job description, but I'd like to intern for 10 hours a week and do marketing for our restaurant, right? Or I'd like to learn some of the accounting piece, and I'm in a class for class credit, and right, I've seen a number of students do something like that. Reaching out to nonprofit organizations, the YMCA, a church or temple students might belong to, other community-based organizations. That's a great way to get your foot in the door, because community-based organizations that are nonprofit or not-for-profit are desperate for more help. And this is not the same as volunteering, right? Interning isn't, I'm ladling soup on Thanksgiving at the mission. It's learning a set of skills and then providing them with your advanced set of skills. So I would say to try to be less conventional. Back to use your network, use your social media, and use the existing resources that you have.
Yeah, I love that, because I was going to speak to like the student experience, and that sometimes it can feel just like you're pressing like a quick apply button and then you don't know what's happening. So I liked that your advice, it gets the person involved. If you are using the network, if you are using what you already have, it's in your control, that you can advocate and put yourself out there. And I think that makes a stronger confidence that I feel like you don't get when you're just throwing your name into different pools through one click. So I really liked that, because I was gonna segue into asking like what both the intern and the employer should get out of this partnership. And I feel like you already kind of talked about it, that it can be that double-edged sword, but it also can be rewarding in the sense that you get experience, you get a new set of skills as the intern, and that you can make these connections, but be, a new part of the wheel that makes these organizations turn.
Right. Okay, so that's an essential part of it. So let's do this. If I lose focus, you'll bring me back. But let's do the student experience first. If you're applying for an internship, if you are creating your own, then you simply tell somebody what you'd like to learn, right? I'm going to go to my uncle who's a lawyer, and I'm going to say I want to learn about how to do social media marketing, and he's going to let me. Great. And then you get to put that on your CV or your resume. But if you are applying for an internship, always apply for an internship that has a set of skills that you don't already know how to do. Otherwise, you will be contributing lower level skills. What's the point in spending 6 months? It's like taking a class where you already know it, right? You wouldn't take a literacy class in college. You're there. So apply for an internship that elevates your existing skill set, and if there's something that you don't know how to do when you see a job description or an intern, teach yourself. Go to YouTube, right? And go, I don't know what it means to write a press release. Everything is for free right now. All of that information is there. So the student experience should be that you are learning, you're contributing your skills, but you're not being exploited. You shouldn't be asked to do, at least not consistently as kind of the bulk of your job description, things like running errands or making coffee. You should never have to pay anything out of pocket, right? And then be reimbursed. Like, these are kind of measures that I stress to students, because it is easy to be used as extra hands, and you want to make sure that there's brain power involved, right? I had one student who took an internship, and he said, I helped move this entire office to another floor, and that was the bulk of my summer.
Oh.
And what a shame. He had hoped to be doing broadcast production.
Yeah, and became a mover.
Right.
Oh.
Right. So we want to make sure that we know what the job description is and what any given day will look like. And that's part of the interview process we can talk about later if you like, right? Asking the right questions on interviewing. As an employer, and you're not an employer, you're an internship supervisor. These people are not under your employ, right? You really want to think about this as an experience that is mutually beneficial. You're getting something because you are getting extra hands, but you're also responsible for teaching and training and onboarding someone and offering them professional development opportunities. Hey, do you want a shot at something, right? Can we teach you how to do something? And I think the biggest criticism perhaps or feedback that I have for potential internship supervisors is that they assume that kids know ahead of time how to do things, and that the training or the communication piece can be missed.
I think the best part of the internships I have done have been those opportunities to do things that maybe weren't in the original description,
Yeah.
or, the bonus parts, getting to do, I have done like working events and management, and like that wasn't in my description at all, but
Right.
getting that, like, do you want to? And then getting to do it and getting to gain that experience standalone, that was the most memorable part.
And back to the student experience and to that idea of being humble and being brave. None of us are too good to make a cup of coffee. We probably do it for ourselves every morning, right? So to be eager and excited about a lot of the tasks that we take on, but also to ask people, hey, can I have a shot at this, right? Could I tag along to that event? And maybe there's something I can contribute. Would you mind if I went into the studio? I had an idea for a blog post for a company. How would you feel? And to really create initiative there. I always use the word, be brave, right?
Yeah.
It will also set you apart from the other interns. I say this all the time, so kind of like tip number 7 in this interview, following directions is great, right? Employers need people to do what they ask for.
Yes.
But if you want to be hireable and if you want to be memorable, you have to go beyond what they've already told you to do and offer them something. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, building that sense of your own authenticity and getting out of each experience what you want out of it. And like, it can be intimidating to pitch an idea or to ask for something, but it's, like I said, it's usually going to be the most rewarding, that you went for something and you showed that initiative. And I think, like, for you it's so beneficial, but also for the potential of building stronger connections with that company or with those supervisors, and building that network and showing that you are a hard worker, that you do stand out. I think that is so important. You did mention that those questions, the right questions is what we're going to call them. I do think that's so important, because I think sometimes, whether it's in person or you're about to join that Zoom call, that sometimes the interview and getting into there can be scary. Or then when you're in the internship itself, just knowing what to ask, what to do. I'd love to hear what your advice is on that.
Well, there are kind of 3 questions that I suggest anybody ask on an employment or internship interview. And one is, what has made other interns successful in the past, right? They're giving you, if you ask these questions, they're giving you, to use a patriarchal term, the key to the kingdom. They're telling you what they're looking for. So what has made people successful in the past? Okay. What might I be doing on any given day? Right? What will a day in the life look like? So I think that's an essential question. And then, I totally blanked on my 3rd question. That's so funny.
Usually I like to ask something surrounding growth.
I was going to say it's something to do with, I
like
completely blanked on it.
That's okay.
So you will have to erase that part.
But that's okay. I think something I've found is finding what you can do that may have not been in the description, like you said. I feel like asking what they see long term, what projects you can get involved with. And I feel like that goes all the way back to doing your research.
I remembered it.
Oh, go for it.
How will I be onboarded? How will I be trained? And I think it's really important. And that's critical information prior to taking an internship. If somebody goes trained, we throw you in there. It takes a certain kind of personality. And so some of us, that might be daunting, but that's good information for us, right? Oh, we have a formal training period where we teach you this in the course of a week. Sorry about being so scattered, but those would be the 3 questions I would ask somebody, right? What would I be doing on any given day? How will I be trained? What's made people successful in this position in the past?
No, I think that is great. I was going to say, so we've talked about networking, we've talked about internships, we've talked about interviews, all of these very, very strong aspects of the career building experience. So in preparation, as you're going through college, you're doing your classes, you are engaging on campus, you're doing sports, extracurricular, whatever, but you want to start building that career journey with all of it. Obviously, time is the commodity at this moment, but with all of these aspects that we've touched on, what is your advice for kind of getting that ball moving? Or if you feel stagnant, if you feel like maybe you're not where you should be, or that you don't know how to get there, what can you start doing today?
It's actually quite easy. And I know that time is the commodity, but if you look at how much time we are spending on, well, you all are spending on social media, right, between upward of 6 hours a day on average for the American teen and young adult, then we've got some time that we could loosen up to develop a skill set. And I would really say, and I tell this to my students in my classes, if you want to go into anything that requires writing skills, print anything, whether that's journalism or blogging or something, start a blog. If you want to go into public relations, start learning how to write bios and press releases, even for your friends in their local businesses. You know what I mean? The skills are available. If you want to go into television production, start producing, small segments of something. In other words, get the skills on your own. We have never had in the history of the world access to the information and the tools to do it on our own, so that when you go and you meet somebody, you already have, oh yeah, let me show you my portfolio, right? Oh yeah, I produced a short film with some friends. I've done this, whatever the thing is. Again, that depends on your career. We can't, if you're majoring in psychology and you want to go to medical school, right? I understand that there are limitations, but building as much of the skill set as you can on your own for careers that kind of have that opening and that access, I think is essential.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no social media. There was no YouTube when I was young. I had to learn journalism and broadcasting by going into studios and getting the experience formally. Yeah. But people can do that on their own now with a mic in their bedroom.
Yes.
Right?
No, I think this was perfect. And this is kind of where I wanted to wrap it up, because I wanted to speak to students who may feel like they don't know. And I feel like what you said and where our time is going to nowadays online, that sometimes I think all of that noise that we're receiving can make things feel unclear, or like we don't know, because there's just so many avenues and so many media streams. And so I think what I was hoping to get out of today, and I think we accomplished that with your help, was kind of just illuminating what is in our reach and what's always there and what we can always do every day.
And if I can, to speak to that piece of not knowing, I mean, I was there once as well. I didn't know. I've actually shifted career trajectories 4 times in my life. And I think that the ambiguity is the normal part of the process. If you are 22 and you know what you want to do for the rest of your life, I'd say life is going to have a way of surprising you. Yeah. And I don't know a single person at my age, a single person who is doing now what they thought they'd be doing when they were in college. So part of the beauty, let's go back to networking and internship, part of the beauty of networking is you keep having those conversations with people and you're like, I think maybe I want to be a lawyer. Go talk to some lawyers. And you're like, you know what? I don't think I want to be a lawyer. Yes. Good information. I would never, for example, encourage somebody to go to a graduate program unless they've spoken to professionals in that field prior. I wanted to go to law school. I didn't go to law school after speaking to a bunch of lawyers. I was like, I don't want that job. Yeah. So the networking piece can also help narrow down some of the noise and the what am I going to do. The more interviews and conversations you have with professionals, the more information you get, and maybe the more you start weeding out careers that used to be desirable and focusing on careers that didn't seem interesting.
Right.
The more you intern, the more you actually know what it looks like to work in some of these fields. I've had just as many students say, oh my gosh, I love PR or I love marketing, as students who went, that was good information. I don't think this is the career for me. I think I actually want to. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I think the perfect way that we try to teach that here at the Career Center is that it is your career journey. And there is, the destination's out there, and it might not look like what you think it looks like. It could be totally something unique and different, but that is what is so, so special. So I wanted to thank you again.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
And one more time, thank you so much for being here today on the Career Corner to talk about the power of networking and internships in career development. Whether it's reaching out to a professional for information, to try to get that interview, or saying yes to a first opportunity, I think our students can walk away with a lot of useful advice as they begin to kickstart their own journey and to get into that process of finding what they want to do. And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode. And don't forget to check out the Career Center's website, and you can see all of our upcoming events and fairs and just opportunities to network. You can find virtual and in-person workshops tailored specifically to help you build resumes, acquire networking tips, and just gain the valuable insights and interview tips that can help you feel confident in your journey. And don't forget, one of the most valuable resources here on campus, your professors. They are here to support you and uplift you through your academic and career journeys. Come to them with questions, and that's what they're there for. And as always, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep building the future you want. Until next time, thank you.